Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog, and as ever I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 5 blog 23, or in legacy numbers that's blog number 231. Yeah, 231 weeks, my god. And today's date is the 26th of July 2026. I suppose you could say we're just over halfway through the year. Yeah, it's been an interesting year so far, and that's probably the best way to sort of like talk about this, because it's like halfway. What does that mean to people? To me, it doesn't mean too much really, because I think what's happened since things have happened with my mother is that days blend. They blend far more, I think, than a lot of other people, maybe, in the fact that there is very little excitement in regards to, oh, what am I going to do this weekend? You know, during the week, what am I going to do this evening? Oh, I'm looking forward to this, that, the other, because the caring aspect of things really takes over an awful lot of your life. This is not a damnation of my life. It's just that you can't ignore the fact that, you know, there are very few opportunities for holidays or looking forward to things other than maintaining a normality, I suppose, is the best way to mention it. You crave normality, because if you get to normal, you can build on things. If life throws you a curveball, then basically it destroys the building block of trying to do something. Do you see what I mean? So a lot of my weeks have had that domino effect. You know, you try to be enthusiastic, you try to be, you know, a good a person as you can be, which I think I do. I know, you know, that as a family unit looking after my mum, it's solid. You know what I mean? There's nothing that you can do about that. But the things that we don't like are the things we can't control. In many aspects of my life, when I was a manager and even before that, I knew what I was getting into when I went into work. The amount of times I've gone back into work just recently, as my health has devolved a little bit, and so has my mother's, and so has people around me, there hasn't been a point where normality has returned, because, you know, it could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it could be 2 days into something will change that normality, and it's very difficult then to remain positive. But we do the best. I do the best I can, and that's sort of maybe a theme through this particular diary entry this week. But I'm going to get the news out the way, because the news to me is depressing, to be quite honest, but it's there to date stamp things. So I'm going to try to be less sort of like opinionated a little bit with this. So the first bit was, the government officially shipped strategic devolution powers to its new Manchester headquarters, number 10 North. And I just talked about opinions, but that was the one thing I think that I didn't really like about the new Prime Minister's agenda. Only from a point of view that I like historical things, and I like centrality of things. And I know that there are many, many people that before COVID had to travel into work to do their job. And this one seems more to do with, I can't be asked to get on the train and travel down, Or why is it that London gets all the limelight and other cities don't, aka Manchester? And maybe I'm making things good for the environment because I'm using less reasons for people to travel on trains, cars, and everything else. But what you have to understand is all he's done is given up a seat on a train. That train's still going to go. So I don't want that masking that sort of thing. And so moving the powers up to Manchester, I think, does what he wants, which is putting Manchester on the map like it needs it. I lived in Manchester for 7 years, and I heard other people turning around and saying, it's always London, it's always London, it's always London. It's where the economy, bank, central headquarters are. It's where the government of power is. It's where our monarchs live. It's where tourism goes for all the history, etc., etc. Manchester has got its bits. It's got 2 huge football teams. It's had major sporting events. It's had a lot of money put into its shopping centres, and it's where a lot of the media has moved up into. Do we need now people, looking at number 10 as being in 2 different places? He even put in the central lobby of where he's going to work a door that's black with number 10 written on it, looking like the front of the proper number 10 Downing Street. Great for the people that made that door, I suppose. That's how I look at it. Some people that live in London have now got to travel to Manchester. Have you thought about that? Historically, it's where the Prime Minister moves into, because you are now central power. It is where, if there is say there was a war and you needed to go into a bunker, right? It's where you would be able to be safe. It's where the biggest amount of the police force is housed. To me, it just doesn't ring right, and I haven't looked into it too much, but it's just things that I probably don't understand the reason for it, that makes me go, this isn't for me. This is a gimmick, and that word gimmick has been used, by the way, by the news, and that's rather not an opinion. It's a personal thoughts on this, and I've probably got it all wrong, but I believe I'm allowed to voice my opinion on it. There'll be less opinionates now for the rest of this stuff, because there's not much in this. Moving on to the next story, it says the new PM, Andy Burnham, swore in his new heads of the Labour Party, and also dismissed the possibility of an early election. See what I mean? Just another comment, another news snippet this week. Moving on from that, dramatic footage was captured the moment a police rigid inflatable boat swerved and crashed into a bridge on the River Thames, injuring 5 officers. Now, this was all over the news, I think, Friday. Apparently it involved a lot of paramedics, and I don't know anything too much about the particular bridge, but it was near or in London, and all I felt when I read it was, so how are the officers? Are they all right? Because that's what anybody would think. I don't think many people are going, oh, what damage did it do to the bridge? What were they swerving away from? Were they drunk at the hands of the, on this boat? Was the other boat in the wrong? All of that sort of stuff. I haven't looked into it, but it was all over the news. My God, I think it's because it held up traffic. for a lot of time. So there you go. The next one is weather again. Britain faces a fourth heat wave this week, with temperatures expecting to surge beyond 30 degrees in the next few days. So I take it we're out of the third heat wave and into the fourth heat wave, and heat waves are denoted by continuous days beyond 30 degrees. That's what I gather it as. All I can tell you is we're into something like the fourth possible week of no rain at all. I look out my window and it is awash with dead grass and flowers wilting, and the echoes of hosepipe bans, droughts and everything is ringing in my ears. So what can I say about it other than great, lovely weather? I'm not loving any of it, because from my point of view it's keeping my mum in a nice conditioned temperature all the time, making sure that if she gets sweats, think about it, laying in bed all day every day, how you would sweat. You know what I mean? We wash her, we sponge her, we put new pajamas on, we put moisturising creams on, all of this sort of stuff. And so not only I should think, is she fed up and bored, but just think it'd be like if you couldn't maintain the temperature in there. I know that I find that this room gets very hot. I've got no air conditioning. The air conditioning unit I bought was for my mum. I get to use it light at night when my mum has gone to bed to cool this room down. That's it. And all I can do is what I've explained in my other diaries. Washing my face, keeping myself cool, going out and getting some fresh air, etc., etc. It's all you can do. And I'm pretty sure everybody's fed up with talking about the weather, so we'll move on. The Commonwealth Games is the next one, open this week with a spectacular opening ceremony. Yeah, the Commonwealth Games, absolutely marvellous. Sport, there's a lot of sport. I mean, some people say, oh, the Premiership and the football's back and it's going to be all this, etc., etc., etc. There's been more sport going on this summer than there has an exposure than any other time. And this happens every 2 to 4 years. Commonwealth Games, Olympics, World Cups, etc., etc. And while that's going on, other sport is going on. Darts, Formula 1, boxing, etc., etc., etc. So in the summer, it's elevated to another level because of these big events going on. The World Cup, say, that took up and moved everybody's TV around. And if you're still a person that watches terrestrial TV, it was a major disruption. Less news is made about it because our watching habits have changed. Some people refuse to pay the TV license. Don't blame them. And to be quite honest, if you did, you're watching nothing but sport, which, to be quite honest, is not great for people who don't like sport. So, yeah, there's always going to be the side of too much sport, not enough sport, and I pay my TV license to watch stuff that's entertaining for me to watch, dramas, comedies, whatever, where the money goes to make new productions, not high-end prima donna commentators talking about a football game or other sporting event. And I get all of those different types of attitudes, which is why I just turn around and go, it is what it is, but we live in an age where we can choose what we want to watch, and we can choose, the channels that we watch and how we're going to watch it. Never has there been a more diverse way of watching something on TV and your choice. I will say that. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm happy about it, because some of the stuff that we spend our money on for shows is disgusting. You know, where's the production value in this? I ask myself sometimes. So there we go. But the Commonwealth Games opened, and it opened with a homage to Doctor Who, which was fun for me. Apparently, and I may have known this, but I forgot, was that the TARDIS design, the police box, was designed by the Scottish. So there is a reason that was there. And it was an interesting thing getting the King and Queen from Balmoral to the opening ceremony. It was quite entertaining. It was quite fun. And it was nice seeing a classic Doctor appear in it as well. And it wasn't one of the newer Doctors. So that's a little nod to my history in Doctor Who rather than the newer history. And the last bit of it is a sports-related one as well. It's a bit late news because yesterday Anthony Joshua was in a boxing match. It was all over the media, really, because he's been up and down in the boxing ranks a lot of times, Anthony Joshua. And it was under a year ago that two of his entourage died in a car accident. And this fight moves on to a big production fight that many have wanted to see, which is Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury. So a lot was riding on this in regards to Anthony Joshua. Not that takes anything away from the opponent. It's just that's what it is. So the article read like this: Anthony Joshua was knocked down twice against Christian Prengo in the first round, but Anthony Joshua won. It was a stoppage, and this set up his agenda against Tyson Fury. So that's something that might be interesting for me to look for after doing my diary. The highlights of that. I like boxing, but boxing to me is the era of Muhammad Ali, Chris Eubank, a little bit of Mike Tyson, and then it falls away. Do you see what I mean? So less so now. I don't follow it so much. And to me, I looked forward to the heavyweight ones, even if I did like the middleweights, bantamweights, flyweights. All of those, I did like them, but it was always the heavyweight ones that I watched with my dad the most. But, some absolute battles, Barry McGuigan and all of those, fantastic, But now, these days, not so much so. And that's the news. So really, it's just a little bit about what I was talking about with themes and all of that sort of stuff. Work has been work. It ended on a low this week. I won't go into it too much because I can't resolve it or know what's happening until I go back Monday. And the reason for that is I had Friday off. So I only worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it was the first week of me going back full time, right? So you go back full time, you get into the swing of things, you try to do your job, all of that sort of stuff. I have a meeting quarter of an hour before I go to my lunch at 1:00, which is 2 hours or so away from ending for the week. And I'm told a little bit of news that upsets me. And I think I've left a question with a manager on what's going on, and we'll see what happens Monday. That's all I can say. But it has upset me, and we'll see how it goes. So that's I think the bad news for this week. The good news, I suppose, really is I've got a job, still working, I'm still learning, and that means I'm still paid, and so there is normality. But this is where I was talking about if normality is what you crave, and something goes against that normality in a bad way in your head, then it's damning, and it's made me think for the last 3 days, what am I going into on Monday? So has that spoiled my weekend? Of course it has. I can't think of anything else. Don't know what's going to happen. What's it going to be like? So there you go. But in regards to why I had Friday off, if anybody's been watching the diaries, you'll know that I look after my mum along with my sister, and she had an operation not long ago, and she needed to go for a follow-up. And that follow-up has meant that how we look after my mum changes, because you need 2 people, which means that we've had to look for external carers, and that's took money, and I've then had to sit away and watch, because I can't even be involved when these carers come in because of the insurance. So there is also an insurance policy that goes with this. So all I can do is explain how we do it, my sister and I, so that normality is sort of like kept. Plus, I might learn something. So my sister and I always have a problem with what they call the slide sheet. So maybe I can learn from them. But bless them. I mean, you got to think about this. 2 carers are coming in to a house that they've never been to, a patient that they've never seen, and they need to use their experience doing the job that I usually do every day, and they don't know where things are. Bowls, flannels, wipes, pads, sheets, everything. So they come in, and I've got to sort of like point all that out, which takes time. They've then got to do the job that they need to do. And these 2, by the way, have never worked together either. That's the thing I've learned. It's an independent carers thing, so they pair people up, and they may never have worked together, so they don't know their ins and outs of how to do things. So it took 55 minutes to what takes my sister and I 30 minutes to do, which doesn't seem like an extensive amount of time, but we've only got them for an hour. So it went all the way to the end with nothing. So with all the cleaning up and everything to do done by me, yours truly again, because there's no time for them before they have to go off to their next one. That will change with the second visit, because the second visit is shorter. So all I can say is that it went as well as it could, but things were done in such a weird order that I didn't understand. Take it like this: in the very first 10 minutes, taking my mother's pyjamas off, the lady put moisturising cream on and then washed her. And I'm going, but you've just washed all the moisturising cream away. Surely you wash first and then put the moisturiser on. In my head, I have to do that, and if I mention it, it would seem like criticism. So you stay stum. You see what I mean? You watch and you just go, I can fix that later. I'm not bothered. My mum's not being harmed. That's the important thing. So Friday was an interesting time, and it went fairly well. Okay, that's what I can say. So that's a good thing as well. So really, that then comes probably to my mum, and she's been okay, not great. We've noticed that she's less chatty. On Thursday, we're a bit worried, I think. Wednesday night, Thursday in particular, in that she seemed more drawn out, less chatty. When I say less chatty, less chattier than what we consider now the new norm, and tired all the time, sleeping, not interested in what's on TV or reading the newspaper, and that sort of thing. It's not good when that's happening. You crave for something, something that's not going back within yourself. Do you see what I mean? Which is how I look at my mum. She diminishes more and more, which is part of the heartache of what dementia is. And the danger of it all is it's vascular dementia. You need to look at these things up if you really want to know what dementia is and what the hybrid of vascular dementia is. Yeah, because there are many forms of dementia. And you know, my mother was never one to complain. So when we say, "Oh, are you all right, Mum? Didn't hurt you, did I?" She's always going to go, "Yes, I'm all right." Even now, even though it seems like we you know, that might have been a difficult roll towards me or a difficult roll away, or lifting a bum up to get the sheets under or whatever. Do you see what I mean? It's you do hear the words no, and all of this sort of stuff, but then when you ask her, she'll go, "I'm all right." And that's the sort of thing. And you know, my mum's a trooper. It's why I look up to my mum and my dad so much. They rarely complained about themselves, but complained about what's wrong, right? With things like with my dad, it was his mission, right, to let people know that this is our house and that you don't park in front of it, especially when you got signs up that says "Don't park here," access required all the time, because it's awful that you go away, do a job, when you come back you can't get into your own drive, and they're all going, "Oh, but I only popped in for a couple of minutes to go to the post office." "I don't care," was my dad's answer. "It's a drop curb. It's illegal. It's got yellow lines out the front of here. It says a sign there, 'Do not park.' What is wrong with you guys?" You know what I mean? But we've all been guilty of it, haven't we? I'm only going in for a couple of seconds. I'm sure it won't matter, you know, too much. It's just everyone does that. And then it's a big thing. So, yeah. So I've always looked up to my parents because they never complained about their own health or worries that, you know, in other words, I don't want to worry my son. I don't want to worry my daughter over monetary issues, or this is broken or whatever. I'll just get it done, repaired. That's it. And I think the biggest problem that I've got at the moment, and the reason that things sometimes are on the downer, is I used to work on the fact that sometimes 2 or 3 things might go wrong, and I had the time to work on each one to get me back to normality. And usually what's going wrong now is 8 or 9 things. And then if you can only work on a couple of them, they go on to the next week, and then another couple of things. And you never get to the point where you can now concentrate on building upwards. So you're always at that shit level. And that's my week, really, because that's pretty much, I've talked about my job, I've talked about me, and I've talked about my mum, and everything. This is where I want to end it, is I'm alive. My mum's alive, my sister's alive, and we're all gearing towards trying to get normal as best as we can. And from that point of view, pat on the back to my sister, pat on the back to me. We do what we can. And that's the end of that, really. There's very little else to say. And I hope just people understand this isn't a moan, it's a diary, and it's what's been going on in my week. Do you in your week have nothing bad happen to you? If you were to do your own diary, would it be filled with light-hearted loveliness all the way through? No. I think we've all got our things that affect us. And that's why I hope people appreciate that it's an honesty thing. You know, I don't like to put other people in a bad light or something like this, and work sometimes might look like they are the monsters. They're not. It's how it affects me, and sometimes what affects me is because of the way they explained it to me. Yeah, I would say that the worst thing about work is sometimes people don't put in enough thought on how to express this to you. I mean, my particular problem with that meeting was at 12:30 I got a diary entry to have a meeting in 15 minutes. And when I got into that meeting, it was to tell me something that I have no control over, and it was before I was going on a day off, my first day off since I've returned back to work, and I therefore am dwelling and thinking about this week with no conclusion to it. And they didn't try to conclude it either. There was no, oh, we'll have a little follow-up meeting just before you go, just to calm you down or whatever it was. It's now a wait until Monday. Do you see what I mean? It's almost like that feeling that you get when you go for a job and you know the interview is coming up, and a couple of days beforehand you start to, oh God, I'm starting to get nervous type thing. It affects you. You get a nervous stomach, you feel sick, you can't sleep. Times that with my mother's issues and everything else, and you get another shitload of stuff that's happening to you. And excuse my French, because I tried to keep the swearing down for a diary. So there you go. So let's move on from all that negativity. Let's move on to the good stuff. Hey, that's the stuff that I like. The stuff that you can sort of like build upon and give you some happy memories and all of that sort of stuff. So the first thing that happens after I talk all about me and all of that other stuff is the shout outs. And this is where I walk that line. I don't like to alienate everybody. Thank you to everybody that watches this diary. I really do mean that. There are some people that just want to know what's gone on in my life, or what's going on in other people's lives, or what could be possibly being brought up. Okay? And then there are other people that want to comment on it and give their opinion on something. Those are the people that you do the shout outs to, and they're therefore going to be mentioned and their comments read out and everything else. But everybody, friends, past friends, and general public, thank you. You know what I mean? You've shaped my life, and sometimes the bad things are needed. It makes you honest, it roots you. Yeah. So, and for those people that try to make my day, you're eternally in my heart. That's what I can say about that. So, in no particular order, these are the shout outs for this week. It's Carl Todd, Ian Hill, The Ramblings, Denny, Wee Bob Art, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Martroid, and Robert's Retro Gaming. And I'm sure that there may be others that have commented and their comment has disappeared. Apologies. I don't know if that's happened. I have no control over it. YouTube is what YouTube is. And all I can say about YouTube is, thank you, YouTube. You've given me a platform that costs me nothing to do this. So, you know, what is there to dislike? Yeah, I don't like it when my friends have commented and they don't appear. And I certainly don't like it when people think that it's me that might have started the reason why their comment doesn't matter. I've done nothing like that. So there you are, that I know of. Okay, that I can think of. So we might as well get into the comments. And like I say, you know, I might have to take breaks and all of that sort of stuff, but I'll try and keep going as best I can, because right now it's quite early. And that means it's a bit cooler in here, but that will change. And the first one is Carl Todd, right at the top. It's not in any particular order, it's just that's the one that's written at the top. And it's got, "Hi Del, sorry about last week. I did send some quick questions, but I've been really busy with multiple things recently, and I think my update was too late." It would have been, matey. Like I say, you don't know when I start doing my diary. So if it turns up at, say, 10 or 11 o'clock, the likelihood is it never showed. Because unless you refresh the page that you're on, you're not going to see a new comment. So it's the page as it was when I opened it to start my diary. If I hit the refresh, it truncates all those comments again, and I have to expand them all and all of that sort of stuff. So, so you continue writing earlier this week. I hope that I'm writing earlier this week. I hope that your week went okay and that you have been able to manage the increasing work hours okay. I hope your mum has had a comfortable week too. And here's some questions for you. Now, it's interesting because he said last week. So I have opened up last week's comments. So it means I can go to it and read it out verbatim. And I think it's only fair that I do so, right? The person wrote a comment and I never read it out. So it says, sorry, Del, I'm super late. I think we know that now. It's been a very busy last few weeks with work and also family things going on. I hope that things are good as can be with your mum. How is work going? ? I guess it must be a nice distraction from everything else that has been going on. I know how much you love getting some questions, so here's some quick, easy questions. Okay, so these are last week's questions and they've got new ones this week. 1. What was the first film you watched at the cinema? ? I think you mentioned going to a weekend film club. So maybe the first film that wasn't at the club. Now, yes, I've mentioned Saturday Cinema Club that my hometown had that I remember going to see. And I think the first one was Disney's Robin Hood, the cartoon one, where they're played by animals like foxes and snakes and things. It would have been a double bill. So it might have been a repeat of something like Escape from Witch Mountain, or it could have been the Aristocats or something like that. So it's very difficult to think back because I would have been 5 or 6, where it was my sister would have been 18 months older. She may have come with me and she would have been the one in charge of me, if you see what I mean. And therefore she could rely on us to be looked after by the staff at the cinema itself. So what would have been the first film that I saw outside of Cinema Club? Well, I think I would have had to have been, and this is a guess, about 10. I would have thought that I was able to go to the cinema with, say, a friend, right? And outside of Cinema Club. And so from that point of view, the film that instantly comes to mind, and it probably isn't the first film, is Meteor. I think that was shown at Cinema Club, but I also know that it had a major release. And from that major release, it would have been a you or a parental guardian type film. It would have had somebody that I recognise, so it had Sean Connery in it. And it would have been space. And I love it. When I was a kid, I loved space, dinosaurs, that sort of thing. So Meteor comes to mind. But it could have been something non-spacey relatable. So yeah, but that's going to the cinema. I saw films on TV. Those aren't included. And those films would have gone back earlier, and they would have included Will Hay films and Norman Wisdom films and Carry On films and all of those sort of stuff that I would have seen at a very early age, but not necessarily going to the cinema. And that's a funny thing, actually, because I remember going to see Carry-Ons at the cinema, but I don't ever remember them being at Cinema Club. Maybe it's because of the double entendres, risque, seaside humour of them, even though they were on telly. I don't know whether the cinema would have found them difficult to show to 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds on at the pictures. I do remember Cinema Club had always mini serials like Flash Gordon and the Rocket Man and things like that. Batman serials, all of that sort of stuff, and Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry as well, and all of those were intermixed with the films that we were going to see. And the adverts were geared, I think, towards kids as well. So they put some thought behind it, I will say that. What's next? I don't know if I can answer any better than that. We'll say Meteor just for, you know, the answer to it, but it could be something else. What was the first 4K Blu-ray / Laserdisc that you bought? Oh, God. Laserdisc. That's a difficult one. I think it would have been either Some Like It Hot Criterion Edition or Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. I bought Laserdiscs before I had a Laserdisc player for when I got one. You know what I mean? And I do remember having Some Like It Hot as a gatefolded Criterion release, and I didn't even have a player, which shows you a little bit about the collector in me. And I think Star Trek VI was something that I bought a week before I got my Laserdisc player. Possibly. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a number. It's a difficult one here, but that's that. When it comes to Blu-ray, that again's a difficult one, because I remember when I got my DVD player, one of the very, very early releases I got was The Matrix. And I think I got The Matrix within the month of buying the DVD player, which meant that I would have got something with the DVD player because I bought it from a shop that was set up for hi-fi and TV and video equipment, and many of the stuff that was going on at the time to entice people to buy DVDs was to bundle it with some films, which you sometimes had to send away to get. They didn't actually have them in stock at the shop itself, but sometimes it was, oh, we've got those in the shop, or it's actually in the DVD player box itself because it's a bundled deal. So it might have been a film I didn't want, like I think I got with mine Robin Williams' Flubber, if I remember rightly, with my player. So I'd have to think about that, because usually those deals are based on the brand. And I remember one of the first, my first DVD player was a Sony. So, yeah, that's difficult. DVD. So we've done that one. But Blu-ray and 4K is harder. I'd have to open up my database to sort of like find out, because I can put it in date order. You know, purchase date order, because I do put the purchase dates in to know that. But when it comes to 4K, I think it would have been after I bought my telly and my Denon receiver and my Panasonic 4K player. It may have been, let me think. It would have been a reference disc, and it could have been 2001: A Space Odyssey or something like that. I know that when it came to buying the equipment before the ones that you see behind me now, which is my Panasonic Plasma, that it was a 3D TV, so the player came with a mail off to get Avatar, the 3D Avatar, which was specific to only being able to be purchased by Panasonic. You could not get Avatar for your Sony. It wasn't in the shops. You only got it because you'd bought a Panasonic device. So I know what that first 3D film was. So I know that much. I think I've given you some good answers there. I'd have to really seriously think and look at things and look at my diaries of past to really know. And the third one was, what was the first foreign country that you went to? And that would have been a school visit. No doubt about that. And it would have probably have been Germany. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Germany. And I think it was a place called... It was very near Dusseldorf. I think it was a place called Wuppertal. Spelt with a W. Wuppertal. So that's for definite. Germany was the first foreign place, or that I went to, or holiday away from the UK mainland. So yeah. So those were the questions from last week, and this week you've got number 1. Following the discussion of sound in films last week, do you remember the sound tests at the cinema? So you have, do you have a favourite? I'm thinking of things like the Dolby Digital Train demo. Wow, that is a big subject. So yes, when we went into the cinema at our local Odeon, it was not a modern cinema. It wasn't like VUE or anything like that. So you had the adverts and everything. Before the film came on, they did this little sound thing. And we only had Dolby stereo. We didn't have DTS or any of that sort of stuff. Okay. But they did do still the sound tests, as they were. And the first time that I saw the Dolby Digital Train demo was actually on a Laserdisc. I bought a lot of Laserdiscs that were THX or Dolby Digital, embossed on the actual disc. So the THX is a well-known one. You get a blue border box, THX, slap bang in the middle, and it had this crescendo of like this. That was THX. And the Dolby Digital Train was a black and white steam type thing that you heard the train sort of going, a steam chain type sound. And that was fantastic. And that was all on the Laserdiscs. And I did see them occasionally at the cinema. But they had different types of sound tests for Odeon. And because it was only stereo, they utilized less of them. But it was when I went to Cineplexes, like I went to the Milton Keynes famous cinema to us in my area at Milton Keynes called The Point. And that was my first real experience of oh my God, isn't cinema so absolutely awesome compared to my local cinema, right? And it was I got to get here every week, but I couldn't because I couldn't drive, or getting someone to drive, or money for the fuel was a problem. Do you see what I mean? So, yeah, The Point was an eye-opener, because The Point was not only an eatery, a cinema, a nightclub in the evening, and an arcade in one. It was exciting to somebody in their 20s. And we used to remember how to get there by how many roundabouts you had to go in, and then how many roundabouts you had to go west on to get to the point, right? And if you miscounted, you got lost, because Milton Keynes is a bloody nightmare with roundabouts. You got it wrong and you were stuffed. The amount of times I miscounted, I think it was 7 in 3 west. Yeah, something like that. It might have been 5. So you got it wrong and you're in the shit. Anyway, that's my thing about the sound system. Secondly, too, keeping to the topic of sound. Oh, okay. What is your favourite game music? Maybe some retro titles and something more modern too. Oh, wow. There wasn't too much sound on my early computers. I mean, obviously the ZX80 and the ZX81 had no sound. And the VIC-20 had a brilliant sound chip, but mostly really for sound effects, the music. Although I had the great pleasure of typing in from a magazine, a game called Black Widow. And when I pressed run and I finally got it to work, you were greeted with this music, and it was called 12-bar blues. You know, 12-bar blues, right? And it was an eye-opener because I hadn't been experienced into too much music at that time, because I'd been buying cartridges and I had no tape deck for my VIC-20. And until I started to manage to buy a lot more type games a lot quicker because tapes were cheaper, the games that I were buying didn't have too much sound in them other than sound effects, right? Things like Omega Race and stuff with the Norm, Jack Attack, that sort of stuff. And they didn't really have much music in them. I think Mousetrap did, or as most people in the arcade would know, Radar Rat Race. That had it in. So it was when I got to the Commodore 64 then really there was music. Even my Atari VCS had very little to do with music. And my Atari 800 had music in it. But I was more excited to get into the game, so I don't remember it too well. But when you got to the Commodore 64, and I remember going into the local shop, and Revenge of the Mutant Camels was on demo in this shop, and it was playing a classical piece of music, and it was done by Jeff Minter's friend Lindsay, I think his name is, surname Lindsley, got his name, and it was a rondo piece that I went, oh wow, I'm humming this tune, because I was looking at the shelves and what to buy. This thing was over in the corner, and it was on the loop, the music. You know, right? And it only just got better after that. Ghostbusters came along, and it was playing the Ghostbusters tune, and you had the speech and all of that sort of stuff. But then Rob Hubbard came round, and I remember the first game I bought, and I didn't even know the name at the time, was a game called Confusion. And it had the proper band musical version on the second side of the tape, and the other side was the main game. And so I listened to the Commodore 64 one and I thought, this is all right, this tune. And then I looked at the cassette and it said, oh, you can play this in your sound device, you know, your tape player, whatever, and listen to it. I went, oh, there's words to this thing as wow. Yeah, I remember it went, please, please, please help me, please, please help me. I'm looking at you. Anyway, so this is going back 84, something like this. But from then on, Robberman, right? And it was Thing on a Spring, Monty on the Run, Crazy Comets, everything was Robberman. And so, obviously, there were other artists, that came along, that are equally fantastic. But later on in life, I started to buy things from C64audiolook.com, and I've got this one signed by Rob Hubbard himself. There's a picture of him. There's the front, and you can see all the games. Look, there's Thing on a Spring there. Look, Monty Mole, just like I was explaining. Zoids, look, in the corner there. What else can we sort of like see there? Look, you got First Night, I think. I'm looking at it from a camera perspective, so do excuse me. And all of these CDs of his music. So that was fantastic. And then, of course, later on, you got people like Marcel Dawn, who was part of the sort of like retro group for bringing back Sid music and using sort of more instruments higher than what the Sid could produce. And you got things like Project Sidology, look. And they're done in the style of Jean-Michel Jarre and Vangelis. And you've got like Magnetic Fields, Rendezvous, Waiting for Sid, remixes, Chariots of Sid. Oh, absolutely fantastic. And the reason this one's still closed up is I have got two of these. One of them is open. But with every single one of these ones that I've got on CD that you're seeing here, you got a digital version of it. So we're jumping ahead, but that's sort of what I listen to. So you asked the question, do you have a favourite? Too many to mention. I've been on Mainmeister's channel. I've talked about this on other channels, and we've talked about our love of music in games. One that comes to mind recently would probably be the composer of the Guild Wars games, the music for that, because it's so operatic. And also King's Bounty comes to mind. That main theme in King's Bounty that plays is just absolute. It's called Victory Run, I think. And it's because you're on a steed, a horse, and you're traversing around a map, and it's absolutely fantastic. So those come to mind, but it's such a complex subject, that one, because I've listened to arcade music like Outrun and Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, Gyrus. They all come to mind that stand out when I walked into an arcade, including the Star Wars arcade game. They just stood out. Even like Mr. Do's music, which is abstract to say the least, because it played while you were sort of collecting all the fruit, if you see what I mean. And it was just an earworm ditty. Do you see what I mean? So there's that. And then 3, a final question on sound. What is your favourite way to listen to music? Well, we're in such a diverse way that we can listen to music now, but vinyl and so records and CD will always be in my heart. But I listen to everything now on MP3s, on my phone, pod players, all that sort of stuff in the car. My car, I went from tape to CD that was able to play MP3s, so I could have multiple albums on one CD, so without having a CD changer. We're in a blessed way, technology-wise, for how we listen to our stuff. my fondest memory will always be the record player, of course. Listening to War of the Worlds as a double gatefold album on our old gramophone, we called it. It was a wardrobe sort of like sized record player with radio that was at my nan's house that was moved down here. And that speaker that was in that system was immense for War of the Worlds. Sometimes I thought it beat some of the hi-fi stuff that I had with my first hi-fi player. My sister was, I think, probably the pioneer of having a hi-fi deck in our house. She had it one Christmas. It was nothing special. When you think about it now, do you remember the old Amstrad hi-fi units that were wooden surrounded, but they had the silver fronts, and they looked like they were separates, but they were just one blank plate with hardly anything behind it. I took that thing to bits to fix it one day. I think it was because the belt needed doing on something. And I was the techie person in our house, and that thing was empty behind it. So, yeah. That's the answer to that. So take care and best wishes to you and your mum. And that answers Carl Todd's bit, and that spent quite a bit of time on Carl, but he did ask 2 lots. He did have the beauty of having 2 lots of stuff, and I hope he appreciated that. I'm just going to quickly have a quick break. Been talking now for an hour without a break. That's really getting quite good for me. And I'll be back shortly. Won't be long. Be seconds for you. There we go. And actually, that was a pretty short break. You'd never know it, but it was very short. Splashed some water on my face. Made sure my mum was okay. And sat straight back down. Because I'm getting quite excited by some of the questions that might be coming up. So we'll go as long as we can, but remember, the closer I get, the more I have to go over and help my mum with the second part of her cleanup routine. So salute to my friend Carl Todd, who had a lot of questions there because of the two weeks worth. But I thought it was wise that we did that. And the next one I'm just scrolling down is Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And as you know, I do something with Ian on a Wednesday every week. It's been a bit disjointed because of the World Cup, but it's now going to settle back down again to being Wednesdays again. And what a great guy this is. I can't say how much that he knows this, because I mention it all the time, that I really do need that Wednesday. It's amazing now. It breaks up my week, makes me talk about things away from the daily grind. And he's so generous with that. And hopefully people like me talking in his little section. And I try to make him laugh as much as I can. And so I put on a persona that isn't me to do that. It's sort of like a shouty version of me. It's but you know, he seems to laugh, so that's good. So anyway, we'll get straight into what he's put. He's put, "Hi Delboy. Hope you and your mum are doing okay. Another week passes by and things have been okay. It's been a bit cooler, which I appreciate. Still had some of the diabetic sweats. Nothing I can really do about them. My legs have felt okay with the new compression wraps on my feet and legs. I've watched, as always, a few films. Last night I suddenly got the urge to watch Logan's Run. That's something that I mentioned... how many weeks ago? It looks like it was 5 weeks ago. So I've seen it recently as well. I suddenly got the urge to watch Logan's Run. What a treat that was, and it absolutely is. I saw it at the cinema and again at university on the big screen. I have to say, doesn't Jenny Agutter look hot? She does. It's a wonderful 70s sci-fi film. I miss this kind of filmmaking. So my question this week is, what are your favourite dystopia films? Which actually has come up before, Ian, but I appreciate actually the subject because I actually did a live with my friend Denny and talked about dystopian films. Mostly the Charlton Heston ones. But I'll see if I can put it into, not a top 5, but I'll mention 5 which I think are great if anybody wants to get into what a dystopian future film is like and what dystopian is. It's a cataclysmic or grungy, dirty look to what the future may hold for us, rather than the optimistic, light, bright, doesn't everything look wonderful, wouldn't I want to live there type future. So Planet of the Apes is a perfect one. It's always going to be my top probably dystopian film. Many people will know the storyline of Planet of the Apes, what we discover at the end, why we know it's our sort of future. So there's nothing much more to add to that. 2 of the Charlton Heston films are Omega Man and Soylent Green. Soylent Green is actually going to be a 4K release that I'll be getting, I think, tomorrow. I think I got the email saying it's being delivered Monday. I think it's by Arrow. And so I'm looking forward to that, watching that again. Again, both of those films are dystopian futures. The Omega Man is really the last man on Earth, which is a fantastic book. And there have been 3-4 attempts at doing that. So it's obviously a sci-fi comfort film for people that like science fiction because it's been done so many times. So that's great. And most people know my love of Blade Runner. A not too distant future, but it looks so industrial and in certain areas a desolate wasteland, especially if you watch Blade Runner 2049 and you head off into other areas that look a little bit like Vegas. There are huge, destructive, derelict areas as you fly into the city, and then it's monuments and derelict buildings that you see there. So Blade Runner is there, and one that people don't really mention too much, but I still think is an absolute brilliant film, and one I need to return to actually this year, and that's 12 Monkeys. Such a great film. They made a TV series as well, which wasn't too bad. But 12 Monkeys is that time loop type film where you just haven't got a bloody clue what's going on until the end, really. And then it's very confusing. But it's the deliberation that you have, excuse me, that makes you go, oh, wow. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think 12 Monkeys doesn't get mentioned enough. There are many dystopian films, and there are more than those ones. But I thought I'd mention those 5 because I think they're important, and I think anybody that might listen to this and go, I need to look at a dystopian film, and I'm unsure which ones to watch. I don't think you can go wrong with watching any of those. So there we are. I don't think there's much else to say about that. So you then end as you always do Best wishes to you and your mum, and have a great grand time. And I've noticed that my friends have jumped in and mentioned Soylent Green in this sort of like reply stage of a comment that somebody else lists, which is heartwarming to me, because it also means that other people are reading the comments before they actually get to me waffling on about them. So that's good as well. So absolutely fantastic. You know, Ian Hill, The Ramblings, has got an actual channel. I'll be talking about that later on. A great question, a favourite subject of mine, and Dennis, and a few others that I know, and absolutely marvellous. Thank you so much, and Excelsior, and salute to you. So we get to Denny, speak of the, speak of the devil. Let's see what he's got to say. Because I haven't read these. Well, it's 9:30. I'm at work typing out these notes for your diary. Sorry we never got that phone call this week, but as you know, things happened. And yeah, he's got a horrible thing happened to him, and a mutual friend of ours as well that I learnt last night. My thoughts are with my friend. I don't think it's right to mention his name here, but Denny will know who I'm talking about. And, he's had a personal thing happen to him in his family as well. And he did call me. He actually called me, believe it or not, 20 minutes before I was supposed to go live with my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And he wanted to partake an exciting bit of news, which was about the distribution label Network, which anybody knows is a much loved and missing and lost label for our physical media, and a personal fave of my friend Jim Jam Movies and TV. And of course, Network was set up with a couple of founding members, and one of them died about 3 years ago, just before Network went bankrupt, to be quite honest. And that left two other founding members. And it's taken a long time, but they are now back. And we don't know if it will be the exact same name, but they're clawing back their back catalogue, and they've promised new stuff is on the way. Now, that's the important thing. New stuff is on the way. And like anything, if you're going to do something or take something out of administration, say, you need money to do that, and then you need the extra revenue to keep the business going, and you need to have a hook that makes people continue. So they're going to want to sell their old stock to get the money in to continue projects or bring out stuff that they couldn't do. So exciting times. But we'll continue anyway along this line. But we did have a phone call, but it was very, very quick. It was 5 minutes because I was about to go live. You continue. It's been quite a mixed week for my family. I took my folks to Belton House, Lincolnshire, a National Trust site. This was a journey 38 years in the making to have the moon dial experience that was from a time the BBC were brilliant at these type of dramas for kids. It was an absolutely fantastic day. I definitely recommend the experience. Food on site was priced sensibly, £3 for a latte and £2.70 for a scone. Plenty of seating for everyone. When we came home, a visit from our cousin, who we only see at funerals, surprised us only to let us know my dad's brother had passed. The process of life, but what was a fantastic day turned into sadness. So he's mentioned himself what that sad news was, and it just shows to show you I didn't know what he was going to write. But I'll still keep the other one to the person that needs to say it themselves. And it is a friend to many on here, and they may already know. Not much more to add, though I've got 30 Days of Night Steelbook arriving tomorrow. Bloody expensive, this one, in case you didn't know. The 1986 version of Trick or Treat 4K is coming out on Arrow's new label, Toy Robot. So my question for this week is, what's your favourite National Trust places? Hopefully speak soon, mate. Best wishes to your mother. And this is a difficult one. And tricky because I'm not quite sure of what things are under the National Trust or not. But when my dad died, and we're talking 10 years ago now, so approaching the 10th year, I stayed with my mum and we didn't really go anywhere. Money was tight. The things that my dad would put towards the bills had to now be covered by my mother and I. So, you know, things like the Sky which was paid by in thirds, you know, between 3 of us, was now between 2 of us. And, you know, it went on and on and on. Things that broke down, you know, had to be repaired with both of our money as best as possible. It was still mostly my mum's, but, you know, I put in as well. And that's because I had to step in. And then, of course, with my mum's current health situation, even more that's happened. And so in that period of time, I've not gone to the pub. I've not gone to the cinema much. I've therefore not gone on journeys. When I was taking my mum on journeys, we'd go and see my granddad's house before he went into hospital and then eventually went into a nursing home and then eventually passed away. Taking my mum was always to the grave site of my dad, her husband, and going to see my granddad at those houses, you know, what I just mentioned, the house, the hospital, and then eventually the nursing home. So we went to our, you know, those places like Southam and Warwick, but we didn't really go on days out. Do you see what I mean? And so you have to look then before that point. And before that point, I was recovering myself from sciatica and trying to get a job and maintain one. And it was the most disruptive time because I'd left Lloyd's Bank of something that had been a job for 16 years and got into jobs that were lasting less than 5. So money was always, I've got to save, and all of that sort of stuff. So again, we didn't go anywhere. So my times with the National Trust would be before my dad died. And the only place I could think of that's definitely in the National Trust area was Stowe Gardens, which is not far from here. It's Buckinghamshire, Bucks. Because everything in Oxfordshire tends to be independently owned. I mean, if I mention Blenheim Palace, you'd think, oh, that's a National Trust site. No, it's not. It's independently run. It's not a National Trust place to enter where you need a National Trust card. Things like the Model Village, the Rollright Stones, all of those sort of places, I think are independent and not National Trust sites. So, to answer specifically, there is only one I can think of. We probably went to many when we went on holidays, family holidays, when I was a kiddie. When we went to Wales, when we went to Barry Island, Cardiff, Prestatyn, all of those sort of places. Brecon, I remember. I'm not sure the Brecon Moors are National Trust, but I've loved going through woods and walking in nature and going with my dad fishing and going along canals and rivers and reservoirs. And those aren't, again, National Trust type things. So, yeah, Chipping Norton probably has some National Trust thing there. I'd have to think about that. But the only thing that comes to mind is Stowe Gardens, a lovely place, sort of like a stately home with gardens, right? And they're in a sort of like theme. They're Georgian gardens in particular, and they're beautiful. Definitely worth the admission price. If I remember rightly, when I went there, it was below £10, and at a great time. So that answers that, my friend, and salute to you. And I hope things turn out better than they are at the moment, matey. I know that you're going through the right rings with work as well. So salute to you. Let's hope that things get better for us both, matey. And we move on then to Wee Bob Art, my friend Wee Bob Art. Oh, by the way, my friend Denny's working on his own channel at the moment and is making fantastic progress with restoration work on cassette inlays, box covers, magazines, and he's still continuing along his adventure line stuff. I'm so looking forward to that stuff coming out. It's been far too long, matey. We need to have that stuff out. And we move to Wee Bob Art, who you know has got a channel, and he hasn't done anything since he got his movie room set up. But again, he's working hard, and you know, we've all got jobs, and it's very difficult. I mean, just doing this on a Sunday sometimes can be very difficult when you've got things going on. I know I haven't done anything but my blog for at least 2 months, and that's something I've got to work on. Not only because I think that there's a need for the channel, but because I want to. It's not for any reason other than tiredness and life that's stopping me from doing it. That's why my friend Steve Still Plays Games comes in, because he asked the question, when are you going to do a live? It's been far too long. It bloody well has. But I have to do these things generally when my mum goes to bed. We're in the middle of summer and she's going to sleep about, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Well, 10 o'clock at night, I've got to be up at 6:30 in the morning. I definitely don't feel like putting a game on and playing or doing that sort of stuff. So, you know, on Saturday and everything, I'm doing some of the jobs around the house and prepping this blog. So, but it will be found. That time will be found, especially anything that I can do a quick hit on. And quick hits to me are more the film stuff than it is the gaming stuff. Believe it or not, the gaming stuff takes a bit of time with the research, less so with the films, because the films are more memory orientated. Plus I've got this database and I can just read out from it, and it spurs me to go, oh yeah, so there's the research already on it. But with games, it's your memories, and you got to play the damn thing and set the system up that you're playing those games on, and sound level checks and all that sort of stuff. The biggest headache with the movie stuff is the trailer, whether it's going to be rejected because the trailer's going to be listed as copyright infringement and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, the film stuff is usually an easy hit. So don't be surprised if the thing that I come out with first is going to be film or TV related, you know, just because of the ease. But anyway, we get to Wee Bob, and like I say, he's got a great channel and all that. Please go and have a look in my description and you'll see a lot of these links. But let's see what he's put, shall we? Thanks for the comprehensive answer to my question. That was about sound from last week. I have a few of the movies that you mentioned, and I will give them a go at getting them on the sound system. I do need to get Spider-Verse movies, as I enjoy them. Yeah, and there's in that first film I mentioned about a scene in there that's absolutely wonderful. It will give your speakers a bit of a workout. Anyway, hope you are having a decent week. I am feeling slightly under the weather this morning, but hoping it will pass, as there is a busy work week ahead. Unfortunately, my wife is night shift, so I may have to wait until next weekend to test out the sound system and maybe do a video review or similar. Oh, well, I hope that goes well. I don't expect to be mentioned, but I do hope that the advice or my personal talk on it equals, or you can see flaws in what I said. All criticisms welcome on that, because some people may think, oh no, the soundtrack is most important, not that what he was talking about with the ambient effects and all of that sort of stuff. I wholeheartedly believe it's the whole picture, right? Never anything other than that. I mentioned a few highlights like the Superman titles. An easy one to recreate in your room, requires next to nothing equipment-wise. You could do it with a Dolby 5.1 surround sound system, let alone Atmos, right? You can get that effect with, I think, a sound bar that is in a squarish type room that needs to bounce off the walls to get the surround effect. I think you'll be able to get that with that. But anyway, question for next time. There was sad news this week of Kaylee Hottle passing away in a car crash. Yes, I saw that. And we mentioned it in Ian Hill, the Ramblings discussion on Wednesday, along with our talking about Kevin Keegan and a few other deaths, and Sam Neill. She was the star of Godzilla vs. Kong, which I've done a drawing many years ago, and I remember seeing some of that when the movie was released. What actors do you miss who perhaps left this world too early? And do you think they are more famous for their early departure, as it is the point for conversation, or otherwise? River Phoenix comes to mind when I think of people in this category. And yeah, we talked about it, and I mentioned what a sad it was for Richard Beckinsale, who was more a TV star, but we have to think about how good he was and how he could have turned up in films, and what a great job he would have done there. He was in a few films. They were mostly TV stuff that he was doing turned into a film, like Porridge comes to mind. I think they did a film version of The Lovers. Think so. Not sure on that one. I think they replaced him in Rising Damp. But you get the gist. He was in a number of films, but nothing. But you could see that with his popularity, it would have only have gone onwards and upwards, and that's such a sad thing. But we mentioned one that not many people talk about now, but it was mentioned at Ian Hill, the Ramblings, and that was Anton Yelkin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Excuse me. Tragically died after the last Star Trek. I think it was Star Trek Beyond. Car accident. Crushed, if I remember rightly, against a garage by a car issue. Such a sad loss. But there are people that come to mind. I mean, like James Dean, we all know these. But a couple of years ago, they brought out an anniversary edition of The Crow, and Brandon Lee was in that. And then we therefore have to bring in his father. Now, Bruce Lee was a movie star, and this is where it breaks down a little bit, because I think he would have gotten better and better, but he did do a lot of films. So it's not like there wasn't very few films beforehand like Richard Beckinsale that I mentioned before. But Brandon Lee, The Crow was his sort of like debut film, and he died on set. And they managed to get the film completed because a good percentage of the film was done, and the rest could be done in long shot that needed to be touched up. So that's a sad loss, Brandon Lee. Everybody talks about Heath Ledger, although again, I think he had a number of films. But one that definitely brings a tear to my eyes and makes me think, oh my God, what could have been, is John Belushi. Now, John Belushi had a number of films. You know, we've got Animal House, 1941, The Blues Brothers. But what we have to think about here is where it could have gone. And these holes were filled in probably by, you know, a little bit later on by John Candy and even his brother Jim Belushi would done a little bit of work here. But just think the films that John Belushi could have been in. I think his last film was The Neighbours with Dan Aykroyd again, which is, by the way, I haven't seen that film in years. It's just come to mind. But there could have been a better Blues Brothers 2 film. He could have been the character to play along with Steve Martin in Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Although I can't think of any better pairing than John Candy with that. But John Belushi was that kind of niche comedian that I think was getting better and better. And then sadly, we had his death. It's why I don't talk and bring into the conversation Robin Williams and things like that. They're sad losses, but they had a career and they had an illustrious one at that. So, yeah, it's a sad thing, you know. River Phoenix obviously is definitely one, and probably one that comes to mind to a lot of people. But maybe a couple of those are ones that we ought to revisit their films and have a little look at. I definitely recommend people look at John Belushi films again. And that Neighbours, I've got an inkling that I want to go and see that now this week. I want to find my copy of it. I have got it. I know that. So I'll be looking that up, I think. Salute, my friend. Thank you so much. And thank you for wishing me well. And we'll move on to the next one. And we might have to take a break then to just check on my mum and get stuff done. We'll see. But it's Robert's Retro Gaming, who, as you know, has got a great channel. I'll be talking about him a little bit later on. And we'll see what he's put. So, hi, Del. Regarding the World Cup, hydration breaks, they are almost 100% about providing more opportunities for advertising, and for that reason, I cynically predict that they are here to stay. Yeah, and I think when it comes to the World Cup, you're probably right. The European Cup, probably right. Our Premiership, no. You have a half-time, don't need anything else. Advertisement, we get match of the day and that, and their recaps of matches. Sky is where you can watch a whole game all the way through, generally. That's our satellite channel. They've got enough advertisement in it. I don't imagine there being hydration breaks in the Championship, the Premiership. It really was for that particular event. And you got to remember the heat and the altitude and all of that sort of stuff. I'm like you. I'm cynically predicting it's going to be around, but I just don't know when it will show its ugly head again. For football, anyway. Of course, if it's 30 degrees in the stadium, a hydration break makes sense, but that's mostly an excuse to institute them across all games. Yeah, and I'm totally in agreement with you. That's the cynical nature, and I'm fully behind all that. Thankfully, Spain won the final. They did, and I was so glad about that. I felt Argentina got away with way too much during the tournament, and they did. And the fight that broke out after the game, started by a couple of Argentinian players, didn't improve my opinion of that squad. Nor mine, and to me, it mars a sad end to a player like Messi, a great player, possibly his last World Cup. He might be nearing the end of his career now, if he hasn't already retired. I haven't looked. You'd have liked him to go out on a high, but it was his side that let it down. Is the people around him and the fans. There you go. You carry on. It's too hard. It's too bad about the cat. I wonder if it has an actual owner. It doesn't really sound like it, but who knows? It's good of you to look after it. I believe all cats have more than one home. And what we knew about this cat, Tommy, is A, it did have a home. The cat also had a twin, but we haven't seen the twin in 6-7 years. And this cat still comes into our garden and comes in and gets fed and stuff, which leads me to think that that could be the time that they moved away, or could be the time that that cat got run over or died from something. It was a bigger cat than the one that we know, Tommy. But it hasn't been in our garden in years. Never seen it. It has got a collar on, but it has no little bauble to say if lost. And the collar is frayed. You know, the cloth is starting to peel away. You can see threads coming off of it. And it makes us think, does it have somewhere to go when it's raining and all that sort of stuff? Which is why on certain occasions we have let it stay in when it's raining to go out, if you see what I mean. We'll let it stay overnight. And that's why we've had to put cat litter trays down and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, there is that. You continue, all the things you do for your mum are really to be admired. And you say that, and I thank you for that. Sometimes you need to feel wanted and needed. And my mum needs us at the moment. And my sister does an equal part in this. And to be admired, you know, or is both of us. You got a question. When you play old games using emulation, or the mister, do you like to use video processing filters, shaders, that simulate the way the game looked back in the day on television sets or CRT monitors? Question mark. I mostly don't play that way myself, but I admit that I do enjoy it on certain systems. Unfortunately, these kinds of videos effects don't translate well to YouTube on a small screen, in my opinion. I suspect most people watch YouTube most of the time on their phones. All the best to you and your mum and your family, and thank you so much. And I'm with you on this one. I rarely put CRT filters on. In fact, if you go back to my back catalogue and have a look, you'll see that everything is sort of like pin sharp. And that might be to a detriment, because if you go to someone, and this is no bad thing, go to someone like Mainmeister, he will make an effort to make it look like it was when you walked into an arcade or whatever. And that works to an extent, but to me sometimes it's a distraction. And I go, oh, those lines or that fuzziness or whatever. I'm sure if I was to hook my mister up to my TV behind me, I may well be starting to use filters. But because I'm doing everything at my desk, looking at a monitor here, I tend to find I'm doing it with no filters on. And when I'm recording, definitely no filters are on. And maybe I'm in the wrong. It's just, that's a preference from my perspective. But I watch most of you guys on the phone. I don't watch it on the big screen. It's a portable device, which means that I can watch it in with my mum when I'm sitting down with you know, while she's watching the telly. I can have a little earbuds in and not have it too loud and watch my friend Mainmeister do a Sunday live stream or whatever. And therefore, I'm watching on a screen no bigger than my fold. So we're looking at that size. Yeah, no bigger than that. And CRT does not translate, I think, very well on that size. That's personal to me. There you go, and an opinion. All the best to you and your mum and your family, and all the best to you, my friend. Absolutely fantastic, and we'll be talking about you a little bit later on. So, there we go. I think we'll try and get another one in. And that's my friend Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder. Absolutely fantastic bloke. What I really want to meet, he's been on a few lives on mine. I looked back at my live stuff, and I noticed that he was on a few chats that we did about computers and gaming. And he's got a great channel, and he does so many high score kerfuffle things. Brilliant. Anyway, He usually puts me right on a load of other things, or tries to. And anyway, here we go. They age check for energy drinks in Tesco. Oh, this is the bit about the legislation about energy drinks. Again, I mentioned in my live stream that the news is the news. And when it comes to the age check, it's legislation now. Not necessarily did they need to do it, even if Tesco do as a policy of theirs. You go into any corner shop that's got energy drinks, it's up to them whether they wanted to. Now they have to. That's the difference. They don't sell to under 16s, this is Tesco, and haven't done for a while. Energy drinks like Lucozade are not the same as, for instance, Red Bull, because Lucozade is mostly glucose, while Red Bull is high in caffeine. That's something I'm aware of. Lucozade was just something that I brought up because when we talked about energy, when we were sick, my mum would buy Lucozade. It isn't the same as energy drinks like Red Bull because they are caffeine, and it's one of the reasons why I don't have them, because that can do awful things to somebody with heart problems. Anything that speeds up your heart or keeps it pumping blood around your system faster. No, not great. I stopped drinking the latter style about 2 decades ago. That's Lucozade. And I get that. I just thought it was a nice happy memory on how Lucozade used to be sold with that crystalline type plastic that used to cover the bottles. I haven't even looked, but I'm pretty sure they're just in plastic bottles now. But Lucozade is still going, if you wanted to know. You continue. Good thing you're doing for the cat. Sending my regards to your mum as always. Thank you very much. And yes, the cat's been in today and he's had his breakfast. AI for restoration, you put. Processing, enhancement, etc. is fine. AI for ground up creation is still a big no-no. Similar with programming. It's great for finding existing bugs and vulnerabilities, but don't trust it to write a program from scratch. Whole 100%, 1,000,000% behind that statement, and what I have tried to portray across in every single one of my diaries. It's just that the reason AI keeps cropping up is because AI keeps being mentioned. If it's mentioned, I read it out. If it's read out, somebody has an opinion of it, and so it carries on and on and on and on and on. But AI's got a lot of media attention, a lot of people opinion on it. So I won't go over that ground. Look at the last diary, if you want to know. Or diaries beforehand. There's plenty of them. That's all from me except. Question. What are your favourite sounds to hear in the real world? Oh, wow. My dad loved nature. He would go to the reservoir and the swans would take bread out of his hands. Animals seemed to love my dad. And when we went fishing, the thing he tried to portray to me was it's not about the fishing itself, it's about taking in the environment that's around you. Nothing was ever more said properly than that statement from my dad. I miss going fishing with my dad, even though I was useless at it. And for the most part, I would say I don't want to go. But you look back at it now, and I would give nothing more than for me to get a fishing tackle kit up together and go with my dad one more time. It's very sad talking about this, and I'm sorry if my voice is breaking up a little bit, but it's very sad to talk about. But ever since then, when he died and I picked up my camera and I decided that I was going to take pictures and stuff, I used to go for long walks, and I would therefore take in the visuals mostly because I had my camera with me, but I also recognized the sounds, the wind in the trees, bird song, listening to the bird song in the morning outside my window is beautiful, especially when I put out the bird seed and stuff on the bird table. Early morning, you can hear them. Gorgeous. And in fact, I think Denny, in one of my earlier diaries, said it was lovely to hear the birds that I could hear your mic was picking up, which you don't get too much of now, my mic picking up noises other than me. I think I've got it set up quite well. Nobody's really said that the sound is bad anymore, so I think I've got that now set to how I want it. But yeah, nature is the biggest, loveliest sound that I can group into just one thing, and people will turn around and go, yeah, I agree with you on that. Because there is so much, you know, there's farmyard animals, there is birds. You could individually say all of these things, but nature, nothing makes sound better than Mother Nature itself. And yeah, the water going along the canal or the rivers, you know, the sound of waves on a beach, seagulls, you know, all of that, taking in the smell of the fresh air when you're along the beach with that breeze and the waves coming in and all of that sort of stuff. Wonderful. And in fact, sometimes when I can't sleep very well, I put on those sort of like tropical jungle sounds or waterfall sounds and all of that sort of stuff to get me to sleep. And they have worked. It's very soothing. Rain is a lovely one. Rain can sound awful at times where it's bouncing on the top of metal, but it can also sound lovely where it's against the window, or you can hear it landing on grass that's dry. You stand out in the rain and go, oh, it's raining, we've had this dry spell, and you can hear the rain landing on the dry leaves that have come off of the ground because they're burnt to a crisp, and they're so crinkly that when the water hits it, it makes a noise, and it's a hard to explain noise. So anyway, hope that's given a good answer to that. And there's only one more comment, so I might as well get to that before I move on, and that is, so salute to my friend Colin Jones, and he does have a channel and it's in my description. Please keep up all the great work that you do, Colin. Marvelous. I watch it all. I'm enamored with how good you are at games. Fantastic. And hopefully one day we will meet and it'll be great. Our little deliberations. I look forward to that. Anyway, we get to my friend Martroid, last but not least. Let's see what he's got to say. Great video, Del. I particularly liked hearing you talk about movie sound. With Sam Neill's passing, I've been thinking back to Jurassic Park and that incredible opening scene where you first hear the raptors in their cages. The sound design was just phenomenal, creating so much tension and atmosphere before you even really see anything. You'd need a pretty serious home theatre setup to recreate it, but experiencing that in the cinema back in the 90s was something truly unforgettable. A real piece of movie magic. And yeah, most people will turn around and talk about the fact that there's Sam Neill and Laura Dern in the back of that truck, and Sam and Laura see the dinosaurs from the back of the van, and the Jurassic Park main theme music is going. But we mustn't forget that before all of that, there was an opening sequence, and it was sound effects, a little bit of music. It's a collaboration of things, and it's an ensemble. And yeah, the raptors there with their screeching, marvelous. Sound needs to be used at the right times, and I've got no problems with films that have got huge amounts of silence in them if the scene demands it. Nobody wants to go in to see a silent film again, you know, from back in the 1910s and 20s, or even before. They had piano players or something playing over no speech, and they had cards. They're great to go back to and look at, but I sometimes wonder, I wonder what that would have been like if they were made with modern equipment nowadays. That same film that we watched, would it be the same? And I think they wouldn't. And I'm glad that we've got the bubble that we've got on silent films, because that again is another passion of mine, looking back at those early days and going, I wonder what it was like with a hand-cranked movie camera, filming on a budget that only people having bums on seats would ever pay for the next film to come in. Hollywood became way too big too quick, my opinion. But there you go. And so salute, my friend, to you, Martroid. Wonderful. And that reaches the end of the shout-outs. And we're therefore going into the final part. And I think this is a good time for me to check on my mum before I move on. Hopefully, I don't know. I've got to go and see whether my sister's ready. So there we go. But I'll be back shortly. Won't be long. And there we go. Mum's sorted. So we get to the final part of the diary, and that is what I've been watching on YouTube. And yeah, I separate it into 3 sections, so we'll just get straight into what the general watched on YouTube. And there's 4 specific channels that I watch every week. This Week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. So This Week in Retro, they were split into their 3 sections. Top American Cultural Creations, Insert More Coins, and Long Live Browser Emulation. And it was a bit of a mix and stuff in there. I've known about browser emulation for a long time. Arcades are not unknown to me. Cultural Creations was one that I hadn't heard of, so it would be one that hadn't come up in my alerts, and it's about a list that's been brought up saying what are cultural creations specifically for America, and they were talking about some of the inconsistencies in there. How can you not have a cultural creation in America and not mention baseball? Yeah, it seems crazy. There wasn't too much apparently tech in there, so I'm surprised it was actually in This Week in Retro, but it is a retro thing, so maybe I shouldn't be looking at it like that. So a little bit of stuff learned this week in that show for me, so that was great. Techmoan, he did a TIAC PD 301 CD radio review for which he called Old But Gold. I think it doesn't come as any surprise to anybody that CD players pretty much dead in the water. There aren't that many of them. What is out there is expensive, and I dare say the death knell of them came around the time that DVD and Blu-ray and 4K players had the ability to also play CDs. But that's missing a huge point. CD players specifically had stuff that a DVD or a Blu-ray or a 4K player might not, like SACD as a format, or something that some players might not be able to pick up upon because of the way it's written to, which is things like text on discs, like track listings and all that sort of stuff, that data, the metadata. So I'm not saying that every player doesn't, but what I'm saying is specifically designed CD players did. So yeah, it was nice that there is one out there. He did say that it's still like 350 quid, which is on the cusp of a 4K player, really, for an entry to mid-tier 4K player. So just to play CDs, that's a bit pricey. It just goes to show you how many of these are actually being designed and manufactured. So that was an interesting one. Gadget Show showed off Samsung's new launch party, which is their Z Fold range. Now, I've got a Z Fold phone, as many people know. They've split it into 3 this year. So there's Z Fold Flip, Z Fold Flip, Z Fold 8, Z Fold 8 Ultra. The Ultra being the one that is more the design of what I've got. The Z Fold 8, the standard one, is now, weirdly enough, square. So when you fold it out, it's better for media, they say. It looks more tablet orientated, where the others are, the flip is just flips into like a normal type phone, more like a clam, I would have said. And the Ultra is the one that is a phone, you know, that's more wide. Sorry, more tall than wide. So, yeah. Interesting that they've gone down that route. They've talked about some of the technology increases on this one, i.e. it's thinner, got a larger battery, and they're using titanium in their crease display inside, which makes the crease less pronounced. Now, all the videos I've shown, you can still see it, and that's because of the way light bounces. Apparently, when your natural eye looks at it, it's a little bit different, but it was interesting to see. It doesn't make me go, oh, I've got to have one this year. Talk to me 10 years ago and I'd be, oh, what's coming out? And, oh, what does it look like? Excuse me. Now couldn't give 2 hoots. And the price of these things. So my Ultra phone is priced this year at $2,100. The standard 8, $1,900, and the flip about $1,500. Way too expensive. And just because you put a new processor in there, the software has been slightly tweaked and developed, the hardware changes is not enough. Not for that sort of price. And we're in, I would say, we don't mention it a lot, but we're in recessions, right? Recession, then not, then recession, then not. We're, I think, in a constant home crisis, which makes me go, this is for the rich. Thanks very much for showing me all your stuff, Samsung, but I ain't having it. So there you go. I will suffer on with my phone for another 2 years. And then I'll probably buy yesterday's design and continue that until maybe I die. I don't know. Very sad, but it was an interesting show anyway. And to hear what their thoughts are as well. And chronologically gaming, as you know, he's still in 1982. He is getting further. His one release that he wanted to show off for the highlight of that whole hour-long episode is the arcade version of The Bounty. But there were lots of games on show. That was the one that's the showcase of the one that sticks out from the whole of that hour-long. He is getting towards the end now. Then he's going to go into 1983, and then it turns into a wow, because 1983 was a major step forward, personal and arcade-wise. So, those are the 4. Stuff else that I watched was Entertainment Weekly. Now, there's multiple channels for this, but it was San Diego Comic-Con this week, and this weekend. It's still going on now. So there were many Comic-Con panels. They're all being covered by many different channels. The ones that I've been watching have been Spider-Man, Doomsday, Spaceballs. What else? I had one that I thought of before I came on here, and I've forgotten. It's gone out of my head already. But there was a number in there that I really sort of like enjoyed. Great seeing Rick Moranis again. I haven't seen him for a long time because he's in the new Spaceballs film that'll be coming out later this year. So that was a highlight and why I was happy to watch all of that. Then we've got a channel called Ms. Mojo, or MS Mojo. This was a differences video between the reality of the baseball league for that's shown in the League of Their Own. Remember, I mentioned a League of Their Own last week, which is about the all-girl American League. And the movie also spawned a TV show, which came out, I think, 2022. But they wanted to point out that the TV show, although different to the film, is probably a little bit closer to what actually really went on, because the film doesn't really talk about segregation too much, how blacks were portrayed in the Girl League, because they were pushed away like anything that was going on in the 40s, before our enlightenment, as I call it. And it is sad to see it, and it just shows the hardship, and I totally get that. So that was an interesting documentary, and I really enjoyed my time with that one. Then you got Adam Savage's Tested. Now, this was a guy that he was showcasing off, and this is what the episode was called, Star Trek Bridge Model Expo and Design. If you're anything of my sort of age, you'll know that there were a lot of Star Trek toys. They were like a little action figure, Mego toys, I think they were. And there was an actual bridge cardboard play set that hooked onto your transporter device that span round, and it made a whizzy transport. It's in the Big Bang Theory, basically, take it like that. Where it made the transporter a noise effect, and because it span round, it went between the sparkly to the figure of your action figure. He's actually designed a play set of a sort. It's a model of the bridge that you can pull the walls away. You can take the roof off. You can pull sections away, and they're all multi-sections, and it has functional displays around it. Gorgeous looking thing. It's a model kit you build. I would not even attempt it. But people that are well into this thing, you're going to be in heaven for the next God knows how many months building this thing. It looked incredible. Then we move on, and there was a little documentary from a channel called David G, and it was called I Am What I Am, the Popeye story. Now, I've seen documentaries on cartoons before, and I've even seen a couple on Popeye. This one was probably the most comprehensive of it, talking about the Fleischers, talking about how the comic started, in the Thimble Theatre, as they call it. And it was just interesting to see how the characters developed, how I think his name is Edward Segar was the artist's name, how they brought his creation to life, how it was animated, where Mickey Mouse obviously beat them to the boom of it all, but you can see the intricacy in the animation. It was incredible. I always have liked that studio, the Fleischer studio. They did a fantastic job. I think they did the Superman cartoon in the 50s. The light and shade is gorgeous. Popeye looks incredible. Betty Boop was in the first one. I didn't know that. So there was a number of things that I learnt about. And then just to end on a light note, there's a channel called BBC Radio 1, which I wouldn't normally go to. But they do this thing every now and again called Kids Ask. And I was just in love with some of the questions that these kids wanted to ask their stars a question. And they were questions like, "Hello, Tom Holland. I'm Maisie. I'm 8 years old. Please, can you tell me how much is in your bank account now?" And I can just imagine going, I don't know what to say. But they have to answer the question because they're kids. And if you don't answer the kids' question and you move on, then you're internationally known as you don't like kids. So they have to answer. And there was so many questions about their relationships, or can you tell me a co-star you don't like working with, and all that sort of stuff. So I did watch it, and I got some great fun. It's out of my system now. I don't need to watch any more. But it was quite fun when I was watching it. So there we go. And that's the end of that particular section, and we move to the film, TV, and soundtrack YouTube. Less this month. Probably because some of them are on holiday. Some of them may be under a Patreon thing. I don't know. But these are the ones that I did watch. Ian Hill, The Ramblings, as you know, I do a collaboration with him on a Wednesday. These are the things I watched of his. I think there's a few more that I've still got to get caught up with. But he did the top 5 action and adventures between 1992 and 1998. Expect that probably to be 1999 now. Doctor Who review, Wheel in Space. So a lovely review of Patrick Troughton's time as the Doctor. X-Files review, Season 6, Episode 21. So nearing the end of Season 6 now. What I Have Watched, Episode 28. And the little sod watches God knows how many. So you can imagine that that's a great little video to watch. And then Live With Me. And I think, if I remember rightly, this must be the week where he does his SFX magazine review. So we shouldn't be too far away from that, if it's not out already. Like I say, the little devil brings out stuff as I'm probably preparing this to be uploaded myself. So absolutely fantastic. Moving on, we've got Just Joshings. He did a couple of videos. The Odyssey is Epic is one. And The Bear, Realism in Media. So these were not all shorts. I think one was a short, one was not, if I remember rightly, but I could be wrong there. But both of them were great. The Odyssey is the latest big blockbuster film, so it's nice to get his take on that. And it's an epic film, which is where the pun in words, The Odyssey is epic, comes from. So definitely worth your time if you've got it. We move on to Blue Roy Movies. He did a couple of videos this week that I watched. Weekly watches from my collection, which is what he does every week. He talks about films he's watched from his collection this week. And then he's got my top 10 favourite sports movies. Very interesting, because sports doesn't get covered an awful lot. You get sci-fi, comedy, drama, horror, etc., etc. People really don't talk about sports movies too much. Being as we've just gone through the World Cup, sports might not be on everybody's mind now, because it's like, I'm so fed up with it. But there are no end of sports films. There's been sports films on Formula 1, driving, football, baseball, as I've mentioned before, all of that. So you're well covered. Golf is even there. So it'd be interesting to know what his top 10 favourite sports movies are. I won't spoil it for you. Go and have a look. It was a great video. Jim Jam Movies. You would think he'd have brought out a video about Network based on what I just said. But actually, he brought out a video this week, first one in about 6 weeks, is because where he lives, they had an Aussie Day. Ozzy Osbourne. Yes, it's been a year on from his death, and what a sad event that was. It was nice to see it celebrated in his city, Birmingham, and a great day was had by all. And it's why I was saying about that devolution, about moving things to Manchester. When was the last time you heard any major developments and stuff going on for Birmingham? And yet that was our second city, wasn't it? You want to start putting some money into things? Why is it always Manchester? Don't know. But there you go. That's just another little thing that I had to say there. Shouldn't really, but it's just how I feel. And then the last one is Commode and Mayo's Take, where he's done reviews of Animal Farm, Pinocchio Unstrung, Ask E. Gene, and he did his box office top 10 roundup. Interesting to see how Supergirl was at the beginning and how it is now, and where the Odyssey is just come in. Be interesting times, especially as we move into the summer and the summer blockbusters. I personally am looking forward to, if I can, of watching Spider-Man Brand New Day, which doesn't come out to the end of July, which is not that far away. In fact, this next week. But whether I'll get to see that on this week, I don't know. But because the film is under 3 hours, I can usually find a time between pad changes, you know, in the morning to the lunchtime to the 4 o'clock. There may be a section in there where I can quickly get in my car, go down, watch the film, come back. That'll be fun for me if I can. because we can't afford the carers to come in for me to go and watch a film. Imagine that, £200 for carers so that you can watch a film that's going to cost you 15 quid. That doesn't work out, does it? Pretty sure you can imagine that. And that's the end of that particular section until we move to the final section, Gaming and Tech YouTube. And as you know, some of these people are people that I speak to outside of YouTube. They've got their own channels, which is why I watched them on YouTube. So that's a no-brainer. And, you know, sometimes they do them, you know, somebody comes out with something each week, and sometimes people have a break. So this can, extend or contract based on everything else. Top one at the top is Down the Rabbit Hole from Canada, my friend Keith. He did, yes, the grenade water bottle does squirt. So this was a purchase he got from, I think, Amazon. It's a water holder. It's in the shape of a grenade, but you can expand it out and you can contract it, and it's got a squirt action to it. So that was great. Then he did, which of these is close to Luke's drumstick? He likes to do these things. He watches a scene from a film, sees a tray with food on it, tries to recreate that prop. That's really quite good. And then he did a GameCube review of Beach Strikers, and he basically turned around and said, what a great game it is. Yes, it's a bit of titillation and all of that sort of stuff because it's women in swimwear and all that sort of stuff. But if I remember rightly, it was Virtua Volleyball in the arcades, and it's just a version of that. And so it's a great conversion, and the GameCube should have no problems doing that. So it's in no, I do recognise that it's got a great pedigree. The people that wrote, I think it's called AM2, I think they're called. They did lots of Virtua games in the arcades, and they did fantastic conversions to their own hardware. So it didn't surprise me that although the GameCube was not a Nintendo device, it was still a great conversion, is what I was trying to get at. So you've got the gist of that. Robert's Retro Gaming, again, also from Canada. I am not worthy. He is the king and queen of Atari. But this is what he's brought out, the sod. Look at this. Look how much he's brought out. Look. Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 47. Minecraft Play Episode 203. Pico 8 Gameplay Invader Overload. C64 Gameplay Defender, the Atari version. NES Gameplay Gyrus. Atari 8-bit gameplay of Cosmic Glob, Equestrian, and Naughty Nom Free, or Nom Free. My God, that's something every day. So you're never going to get short of something to watch if you go and subscribe and like his videos. I definitely recommend you go over and have a look. Steve Still Plays Games has been a bit quiet of late, but he did something this week. He did a Rujliek on the Spectrum. It's a game that's done by a homebrew crew, and he did My Gaming Years 1980/81. He called it 1981, so you don't need the 1980 bit, but it does cover both years. And of course, there's a bit of news in there and a little bit of was going on in his life. So that's brilliant, fantastic, great bloke. Steve is. Need to go over there and subscribe to him. He definitely would appreciate that. So please have a little look at that. Colin Jones, aka Ponder, did his Vblog episode 107, and what a great blog it was. Absolutely marvellous. I feel ashamed I didn't quite get to ask him a question or put a comment in. It's been very busy the last 3 weeks for me, so it's no surprise, but I still kick myself for not. And then you've got Mainmeister. He did a live stream, Top 50 Atari, Part 3, last Sunday. And he did a face-off kerfuffle of Kickoff, the 8 and the 16-bit versions. So that was interesting. Mainmeister usually does a Friday waffle, but I'm sure he's going to be around tonight. And always worth your time and effort to go and see him. And that's the end of that particular part of the diary. I will put the overhead cam on just to show you what's turned up this week. There's a little bit more than normal. So there's the overhead cam. This steelbook has arrived. It is Super Mario Galaxy movie. There you are. Bit of a underwhelming steelbook on this one. No embossing, no debossing. A bit shiny. Looks like leather a little bit, but it's a metal steelbook. But very, I would say, lackluster. This one you can sort of like understand a little bit about the lackluster, but it's got far more than the last one. This is John Wayne the Searchers, a very old 50s western. But even on this look, you've got that cloud look, which is spot glossing. It's got more than the other one did. Absolutely fantastic film, by the way. Definitely worth an investment in if you're into your westerns. This I bought cheap. And it goes to my collection of Some Like It Hot. But this is the UK edition of Some Like It Hot that was released through MGM. This one, yeah, there we go. It's a media book edition. I'll show you what that basically means. So it's not a steel book. It's a media book, which means that there's a booklet in the middle and the discs are there in the pages of the media book. Or generally, that's how it works. In this particular instance, I think the discs are in the middle. But fantastic hardback sort of like edition to go with mine. And then a mistake, because I bought Dark Crystal and Labyrinth as steelbooks, forgetting that I'd ordered the collection. And so my Jim Henson's Dark Crystal Masterpiece collection set came through, much thicker than the original steelbook. You can see there's a steelbook and a book and a few other things in there. Few additional extras, which means that I've now got 2 Dark Crystals, which means that I'm going to have to get rid of one. I might keep it until Christmas and do it as a Christmas present to someone. Not sure. But that's what arrived in the post this week. And that's the end of the diary. Thank you so much for listening in. I hope it wasn't too long. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some insights. Thank you so much for all the comments. Please keep them coming in. And if you like this, spread the word. Tell people, maybe. Subscribe would be nice. But that's not the importance of this. The importance of this is that I've done my diary. I've got things off my chest. I feel a lot better and happier. And I can now face next week aplomb. So there we go. Thank you so much. I'm going to say salute to you and say thank you very much. Be good to yourselves and have a great week till next week. Bye-bye.